What kind of habits drives you nuts? Has this list changed over the years as you travel, as you live in different places? And this might actually be a reflection of how much living in diaspora changes people. Now, growing up as a kid many years ago, I remember there was a radio program on KBC, which is Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, which was the main entertainment option we had at the time in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. There was this program called Je Hunyongwana by the legendary Leonard Mambo Botella. He's a very famous Kenyan broadcaster. Yeah, I think it would come on probably a few times a week or once a week. And he would basically review some of the bad habits that people all over Kenya participate in. And in truth, we all have our bad habits here and there, to be honest. And every single one of us has one of those, whether we know it or not. Some of these habits actually are acceptable in one cultural setting, but may not be acceptable in other cultural settings. I remember when I first moved to Pennsylvania, the issue of taking turns while talking was such a major deal that I never knew about. And people thought I was rude because I would just butt in and talk the same way I would in karting. So today, I just want to review some of these habits that people find incredibly annoying, almost universally. But some of this, as you will notice, really reflect how much we have changed as a function of living in diaspora. Now, I'm not coming after you this morning, so don't come after me either. If I mention something you do, take it easy. We'll just be speaking about all of this in jest. So it's meant to be quote unquote what we are speaking on a light note. So don't throw stones, and if you must throw stones, try and use smaller stones, at least for today. Welcome, friends. As always, we are starting our wonderful morning in the middle of Karating. This is an amazing village in Western Kenya. Those of you who have watched me previously know that we live both in Karating and in Long Beach, California, and we go back and forth. Our intention is to eventually move permanently back to this space right here, but for the time being, we move back and forth. So today we're just filming and cleaning as always with my supervisors in tow. They are always a part of what I do. So let's get straight to some of the habits that people find very annoying. Number one, chewing loudly or slurping. Many of you can relate to the experience of sitting next to a person who is chewing with their mouth open at 90 degrees and things falling out and all that. But I also found out that in some cultures, it's actually expected that when you're enjoying food, you're supposed to slurp as a show that the food is delicious. For me as a Kenyan, growing up in the setting where I grew up, that would be really challenging. And so sometimes I visit a home and every single person sitting around the table is doing it, and I'm the odd one out. And so as a returnee, my challenge is, should I actually show that I'm bothered, or I should just suffer through the entire thing and just be appropriate, at least in their context? But yes, this is something that can be really annoying, because especially sometimes it almost sounds like people are eating with microphones inside their mouths. I still haven't gotten used to that. I go to places where it happens, I survive it, but I still struggle with it. Then the second one is something that I call making it rain. Not in the way that we use it in the West, but I'm talking about people who, while they speak, they just spit all over the place. There's just saliva flying all over the place. In fact, sometimes it feels like you probably need an umbrella while talking to them. It's something I notice. Some people just don't seem to notice that, but I'm yet to get used to it. Then, of course, the other common one, particularly when I'm traveling, is these individuals who find it very comfortable holding very long, very loud conversations over the phone in public spaces, particularly in lobbies or in a bus or in a plane, and they are really engrossed in some really deep conversation that could go for so long, and they are so oblivious about what's going on around them. You hear somebody, especially for us, those of us who come from the lake, hear somebody say, "Oh, 1 million." What is that one? I guess so. And they go on and on and on and on and on, and I'm like people, it's good to do that, but in public spaces like that, you probably want to excuse yourself. It's something I'm yet to get used to. Number 4 is folks who will greet you right after wiping their nose. You will find this in the village too. Some of the flavors of the village. And sometimes I'm just walking around, I'm walking with my supervisors. I see somebody wiping his or her nose, and then they extend the hand to greet. Oh, I see them wanting to shake my baby's hand, and I'm cringing. So usually I'm the first to tell the kid, hey, gota, which means fist bump, to avoid that. But yeah, that can be an issue. In fact, sometimes when you don't shake people's hands, they might think you are thinking less of them. But when you just watch somebody wipe their nose and then they extend their hand, it can be a little jarring. Maybe you're used to it, but I'm yet to get there. And then number 5, you have the smokers. Some of them are nice people who are very sensitive and know what to do, but others just smoke literally everywhere. Well, in many places, it's actually illegal to smoke indoors. And in Kenya, by the way, there are not a lot of smokers, as you'd think. Especially in Gauteng, there are very few people that smoke. It's very rare to find a person walking with a cigarette. But then you have this small breed of smokers who would sometimes just go out right in front of the door and just smoke. One time, actually, I had people who were working on my cabinets smoke inside my house. I was incredibly mad. I've hired you to work, then I find this dude smoking inside my house. I couldn't believe it. And then there's this habit, and it's a very common thing among Kenyan men, especially in places where we have outhouses. In Kenya, we just call them outdoor toilet, but in America, we tend to call them outhouses. So you see a man walking towards a toilet that is typically open, then they go right behind the toilet and they pee out there. I don't know where that comes from, but it does happen fairly often, more often than you realize. And so growing up as a kid, I remember it was very normal for men and women to pee outside. For men, I know what it is. For women, the mechanics are a little more advanced. Now, this is a family channel. I probably won't describe what that looks like, but you know what I'm talking about. But this comfort with peeing outside is not a big deal. In fact, my son, once we come to Kenya, he finds it very comfortable just going right in the bushes and peeing, and he loves it. He'll actually walk past the bathroom to just go pee out there. Never understood. It doesn't bother me, but I just find it interesting, this particular one. And then, of course, you have passengers who are not necessarily courteous, where you give somebody a ride and they're sitting on the passenger side. And then, of course, they're asking you all kinds of silly questions like, oh, so how much is your car? How much do you spend on fuel and all? And then they're on and on and on and on and on. And sometimes just not stop talking. I personally love talking. I'll probably talk your ears off. But sometimes there are people who can't figure out when they've talked enough and they just need to chill, particularly with the questions that are not appropriate. You'll get quite a bit of those in the village, because in the village, every time you drive around, it's perfectly normal to give people rides. You see somebody you're passing by, of course, they hop in and you go. That's very typical to give rides. But when you do that, you'll find things like that. But I love it because typically when I do that, I get to have amazing conversations with folks that I wouldn't otherwise hang out with because I'm rarely out there as often as I wish. And then you have these folks who trash. Particularly in Kenya, you'll see them sitting in public vehicles, and they're eating and throwing things like bottles and banana peels, and it is perfectly normalized. The one case that I find even most annoying is when I've got folks who are helping me, maybe their fundi is doing something, and they're eating and just throwing trash anywhere in the compound. Yet we actually have trash bins in very visible places. To them, that just looks very normal. One time I had this case where I had folks who were fixing chandeliers, a bunch of them. And in our house, we actually have 5 bathrooms. And for some reason, these guys just chose to use the master bathroom, and they simply destroyed it. They were just dangling all over the master bathroom. It was something that I found really strange. Foodies don't typically do that, but this group was a little different. And it turns out that one of them, the main one, had the number 10 thing that I have to mention here. The stinky socks. I mean, all boys at some point had stinky socks. That's not something really unusual. But when you have a grown man with super, and I'm talking about stinking socks to the extent where you cannot be with them in the same room for a minute. So the guy who was fixing chandeliers and lighting in different areas, I mean, every place he goes, and even the places he steps on, we really had to even clean the surfaces they were standing on, the rugs that were in that room. Uh, so with the stinky socks, I don't know what it is about it, but I find it really unacceptable for adults to really have stinky socks. And then you have friends or maybe even family members who will borrow money and then not return. And then the next time they meet you, they pretend as if that never happened. They just come and smile at you. In fact, some of them actually come back to even ask for more. It's like, dude, you forget that 2 weeks ago you asked for money, never returned it, never said anything, and you're coming back for more. Again, it's one of those habits that I'll probably get used to, but not yet. And then you have this very unique case that is also very rare about washing hands in the same bowl. As kids, I remember we used to have something called the kuon, where after you play around, you come back and you all wash your hands in a basin with water. All of you, same water, no changing it. And we never thought about it. Recently, I went to visit somebody in a rural place, and then we're sitting down and they're bringing us water. In typical circumstances, they bring water in a jar and then they pour it for each person to clean. But this time around, I've never seen this in over 15 years. There was one single bowl and everybody was dipping their hands and washing. And I was like the fourth person in line. And at that point, I'm thinking, should I dip my hand in that water or just let it pass? It's very rare, but I found it extremely strange. And then of course, you have folks who don't shower. I actually know a person who used to be a former friend, lives here in America, in a house where he's got hot water running 24/7. He's got his master bedroom in his bathroom, but the guy doesn't shower as often. I don't know why some people do that. And then it turns out actually some of the white people I've known in my life don't shower every day. In fact, they found it strange that we would shower every day. I've never understood it, but yeah, some people just don't shower as often, or maybe once a week, or as rarely as they can get away with. And then one other thing that I observe in airports or in churches, a person walks in, takes the middle seat, and then the seat on the right and the left, they fill it with their bags. And at a time when there's even people standing looking for seats, or the church is full and you have your bags and your books and all that next to you. And at that point, folks are either very busy on their phones or singing or whatever. You're not even paying attention, realizing that the seats that people are supposed to use are filled up with your bags and all that. I don't know why people do that, but it happens. And then the question of repeating clothes. The typical Kenyan man, at least in the world that I grew up in, we typically repeat clothes often, especially if it doesn't quote unquote look dirty. We'll just repeat it. But then the stench of the sweat comes along with it. I'm surprised that even today, people still do it. You meet a person in the morning and they're smelling so much sweat, yet they're right from the shower. And they're smelling sweat because they're repeating a cloth that they've worn probably 2 or 3 times. Some people do it, but it's village vibes. Then you have got this group of folks who chew gum and stick them to handrails, or do what their faces do with their exhaust and then they smear it on the handrail. In fact, this is the reason I don't let my kids touch rails when we're climbing stairs. It's really disgusting when people do that. And then in universities, I used to see folks who stand on toilets. In fact, at the time, public university toilets are the worst. People were literally standing instead of sitting on toilets. Then the last group are folks who use bathrooms or parking spots that are meant for people with disabilities. Folks, I don't know. I don't know why people do that. Maybe it's ignorance, but all I can say is stay classy, folks, and I'll see you in the next. Thank you.